Hello and welcome to All Stats Aren't We, a podcast in which Leeds fans cast their combined eye over goings on at Ellen Road, giving scrutiny to the underlying statistics and tactical footings at work at Leeds United. I'm Adam Elliott, the guy who has occasionally hit a knuckleball of the podcast. I used to play on the right wing, and I'm joined today by the Anton Stach free kick of the podcast. Unstoppable, just like me and my partner in crime. As ever, it's Martin Riley. Martin, how you doing?
I cannot complain. I've had a good, relaxing weekend. I watched Leeds play football and had a good enough performance. So, yeah, I'm very happy with this weekend and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it. For tea, I was just had a quick burger and chips, just I had in the freezer, nothing special. How about you?
It's a Sunday, so there's a bit more time. So I had a roast chicken and it was good. With all the trimmings apart from pigs in blankets, so cranberry sauce. Didn't have cauliflower cheese, had cheesy leeks or leaky cheese, which doesn't sound like a good thing, whatever you want to call it. Had carrots, roast potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, all of that. It was pretty good. So happy days. I've also had a pretty good weekend. Pretty relaxed, even though I did a bit of work this weekend, but it's mostly decent indeed. I also had a big realization moment, and I know everyone has these at some time in their life where you're just not going to make it as a footballer, and I had one of those this weekend. Actually had two of those. One of them was one of the ones we've talked about in admin chat, so I can't go into that. But the other one was seeing like a professional player in League Two score a chip with his weaker foot from a really tight angle, and I was just like, how do you actually do that as a League Two player? And then we're supposed to think that we could maybe have made it to some kind of level. Some of us, I never thought I could, to be fair, but it's just interesting. So that's why I wanted to include that knuckleball bit, which you actually wrote, but I'm glad you did, because I have done that before, and that's a nice thing, because not a lot of people in football have been able to ever do that even once. So that's cool. Anyway, anything else? I don't think so. There's not news really, is there? Well, there's one piece of news, but we're going to talk about it later on because it kind of pertains to the actual match itself. So just a reminder for everyone then, first of all, where can they find our Patreon, Martin?
Patreon.com/ASAW Patreon.
And we really appreciate all the support on there at the moment. That's really helping us out this season. It makes us do more content, drive more content, more quality content. I know we've not had guests on all season, but hopefully we can get a few more before the end of the season ends. And just a reminder as well, we appreciate the support on YouTube, but like, subscribe. And there's a new thing, which I'm going to ask people to do for this, and ask people in the Discord. Don't just like, if you can, press hype on the video. Apparently that's really good. Don't know what it does. Apparently it's really good for the algorithm. So if you could all hype our
not sure if we have that available yet.
Do we not have that yet?
No, okay. We need to hit a certain amount of views, and we're not quite there yet. So more views we can get, then you can help us with that when that does eventually come.
Then I guess, yeah, that ties in nicely. You should give us a watch and give us a like and comment, because it'll help us get to the point where we can hype the videos. So please do that. Anyway, let's get into this, shall we? And we're going to skip past any game summary stuff. We don't do that anymore. If you did like that section, I'm sorry. I'm not going to bring this up again. We have stopped doing it. I apologize. So stats of note before we get into the questions and the interrogation. Pretty even game, although Villa had way more of the possession share in 67% to Leeds' 33%. We had 1.35 expected goals per FOTMOB to their 1.46. Similar amount of shots on target, all of that stuff. Very, very close between both sides. So not a lot in the game in that sense. So I guess that's probably going to be somewhere we get to eventually. But we're going to start with the first half, as we should, Martin, where Villa didn't have a shot until the 20th minute, which is quite nice, because we did say on the preview we maybe wanted to start fast, we wanted to get in their faces, and we wanted to make it difficult for them, like we did against Newcastle away. And in the first half in total, they only created 0.34 expected goals from open play, so pretty low figure. What were we doing during the first half out of possession to do this?
So we went back to the hybrid man-to-man approach. So for much of the opening half especially, we were quite obviously man-to-man in the forward elements of the press, which would then seed into the 5-4-1 mid-block, which we're all accustomed to now. And it was just really well disciplined. It caused a lot of problems, especially in the opening 15, 20 minutes. And we did highlight this on the preview as being a key part of the game. Villa do don't do well in the opening 15 minutes. So I think the analysts at Leeds will have also identified that spot and figured that we needed to get off the blocks pretty quickly. And I think that really helped us to stop them initially from creating anything really real of note. They did end up creating some towards the end of the half, but we did hold them off for quite some time. There were some gaps in spaces, but we did a good job in covering those gaps. You've often found Ethan Ampadu marshalling the gap between the middle of the two lines of pressing units of the back line and the middle, and he was doing a really good job. To be honest, he was excellent throughout this game, but the man-to-man element of it really made it difficult for them to find their attackers in good space. The only moments they were able to get into the box was where one of their attackers did something really nice, or maybe burst past a player who was a bit faster than. But other than those few moments, we were absolutely excellent out of possession. Really well disciplined in moving between the man-to-man and the ball-orientated press. It was just really well done, and it was my highlight of the game. Nearly my highlight of the game. We know what the highlight of the game. I'm not that much of a sicko that.
That's John. That's John.
Yeah.
My highlight of the game isn't the wonder free kick. It's actually how Leeds pressed in the first half. Yeah.
But yeah, it was excellent.
Yeah, I really don't think I can add to this, so we're probably going to go on to the next question straight away. But I totally agree. Like, I think there are quite a few profiles that lean into this side of things. Well, we obviously got Anton Stach back into the side. Obviously, he flagged a bit late on, and we have a few players like that. But for the first sort of 75 minutes of that match, was excellent and getting around the pitch. Gruev and Ampadu, we know they cover a lot of distance as it is. They were great in this one, and Aronson, obviously, little buzzy work boy, and got through a lot of it. So it really worked in that area of the pitch. The profiles made more sense for it, and it looks way better than it did, for example, when we played Chelsea not that long ago. So being good out of possession is one thing then, Martin, but how did we do in possession in your opinion, and what do you feel was the main strategy behind this half?
So I think a lot of it was based around getting high turnovers and going direct. Those were the two main things I think we were looking to do. You saw that from the get-go because we had the opening kick of the game and it went straight back to Darlow. We pushed all of our players up and then Darlow just booted it long. It was quite an obvious strategy in the first half was to go quite direct, and then when we didn't have the ball, looking to force turnovers, and that also worked in our favour as well. A few of the good moments in the first half came through high turnovers, which they struggled with, which again was something we had identified in the preview, was that they don't do well when they're pressed aggressively. So that also will have tied into the approach of going as aggressive as what we did out of possession, because that also helps you in possession because you can win the ball high up the pitch. And somewhere Jesse Marsh might be smiling if he's listening to this podcast. But yes, we were not great ourselves at creating chances. I felt like there was some time where we maybe made the wrong choice. I think it's more player-related decisions. There's one thing where I think Bogle went to go over central pass rather than passing it wide to Calvert-Lewin. But outside of a few moments, we were all right, and we did create chances. We had a similar amount overall in the game to what Villa did, creating more big chances than they did as well. So you can't really complain too much going away to side who were they third or fourth before this game? I forget. Third. So going away to a team who were third place in the league, even if there is some funky things happening with their underlying numbers, like we mentioned on the preview as well, it is still a top side with a lot of excellent players, and we did well to create the chances that we did create, in my opinion. So I'm not going to complain too much that it maybe wasn't perfect at all times.
I think I viewed it more as like rather than third against 15th, 16th, 15th, I viewed it more as like 7th against 12th. And I know you can't just do that, but that's just kind of where I would rank both teams in the league in terms of how good they actually are, not just looking at the league table. And so I thought, a team in 12th going away to a team in 7th. I know we don't do predictions on this pod, Martin, but when I was kind of getting ready in the morning that day, I was thinking to myself, I think we're going to get something today. And it was because of that. I was like, it's just not as big a gap in quality as people think it is. There is still a gap, but not as big. And I thought we can get at them if we can get the first goal. We said that on the preview. We did. And then the strategy in possession was helped by that because the game state absolutely suited us down to a T. I will say one thing that I slightly disagree with you about, which is I didn't fully like all of our in possession stuff because I think it was again a bit of a mix out. There was more long passes. I think we played 17.5% of our passes long, which is I think roughly the season average before we lost that data. But I saw that particular data point today. So that was all right, but there were some moments of doing some of the short stuff that really didn't look good, and we probably did just need to hoof it, to be brutally honest.
Off the top of my head, 17.5 sounds like close to the highest percentage that we've had this season.
I think there were a couple in the 20, like Bournemouth was about 22. I think a couple of those were about 19, 20. I think it's actually close to the average, but I can't remember fully.
Not from my data.
Okay.
The data that I did have anyway.
Yeah, reasonably high then. It might have been a bit above the average then. That's fine. But there were a few moments, especially on the left side of build-up, which didn't look good. And like Strout, Gudmundsson, who we'll go on to, and Gruev, I just didn't think things were connecting very well at all there. And that's three of our actual left-footed players. When we talk about having like a balance to the 11 and having a few left-footers, so you're not just got a whole right-footed build-up, I still thought there were a few moments where that wasn't great, especially in the first. It wasn't as bad in the second, probably because we were going a bit longer or we were under the cosh more from Villa, so we didn't have much of a foothold. But in the first, I didn't love all of that, so that was a little bit of an issue. But generally speaking, the game plan worked well, and like I say, the game state lended itself well to what we wanted to do with the ball. Off the ball, as you said, really, really good. Just a few little notes from a good friend of mine, Jack, that I liked about the comparison to Chelsea, because there were some issues that day, and Wayne Rooney picked up on one of these actually, so it's probably worth mentioning about how we set up. So Pascal Struijk, we mentioned this actually a few weeks back. The outside centre-backs in this formation are allowed maybe a little bit more freedom, both in and out of possession, to do some of the stuff where Strout can step out and follow a runner if he has to. We didn't get that right against Chelsea because we didn't know who to hand the ball over, like the man over to, not the ball, which players should be picking X, Y, and Z up. We got that better in the second half of that game, but in the first it was all over the place. Whereas this was consistent. Strout followed Morgan Rogers around the pitch for the entirety of both halves where he had to. He came out pretty far to do it as well, and it worked really well. He obviously suits that role better than other players that play those wide centre-back roles if we're asking him to do a man-to-man job on someone like a Morgan Rogers, who obviously causes a lot of problems in the first game against them, didn't cause us anywhere near as many problems here. So that was really good. Jack mentioned the fact that the 5-4-1 block and obviously the shape in that being really good, but the kind of lines and the discipline between that being so good. Again, Rooney pointed this out on Match of the Day, did some good analysis on it, the two banks and how the spaces worked. And if a player went out of position a little bit, someone else would kind of fill in that space when they had to. It never looked like it was kind of going to be pulled all apart by Villa, so that was good. Yeah, I don't know if there's much else to say other than, yeah, obviously this season we've got things wrong out of possession in games, and I still happened recently, but I think there were more issues at the start of the season. Have to say that I think the out of possession stuff under Farker as the season's progressed, and I don't think it's just the shape, because we've pressed well in a 4-5-1 as Jack mentions, but I think the out of possession shape in general has just been something that's improved and fine tuned as the season's gone on. There's the odd, outlier game like Chelsea, but as Jack says, if we can keep the discipline from the Villa game up and prove Chelsea was a one-off, then in the back five you can afford for it to be a little less solid, and in the four, and that's what he means about Strout stepping out. And yeah, I was really, really pleased with that, even though it didn't last the full 90, but we'll get into that maybe later on. Martin, then, this is kind of this point. One thing that has concerned us for a long time under Daniel Farker is how he responds to in-game changes from the opposition manager and what happens with him. Obviously, the Everton game is one of the examples recently when we went ahead and how we played in that game, with the lead. But how did he do in this game? Was there any improvement in your mind? Did his changes or lack of them contribute to us dropping 2 points, especially with the goal being as late as it was? Or should we actually see this as gaining a good point away from home, in your opinion?
So I wasn't as bothered about this game as I was the Everton game. Because with the Everton game, the changes happened at half-time, if I remember rightly. So the Everton changed directly from the half-time kickoff, so things were different as soon as it entered into the half-time space. And in this game, it only really the pressure started cranking up around 5 minutes after they made their subs, around the 60th minute. And then we made a first sub like 7 minutes after that. So that's okay for me. I didn't mind the change as well. I think that was probably the change which I would have made. I can't think of any other change which we could have made, which would have really helped us potentially bringing in Tanaka. But then that would have meant we would have had less physicality. But maybe him for Gruev could have been a good change. But I just don't think that Farke is that convinced with Tanaka, so I can understand why he wouldn't go with him. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, just one little thing. Maybe a lot of my timeline anyway was saying Dan James kind of stretch the pitch, look for more transitional moments, a bit more actual like straight line speed, basically. And I kind of got that. I don't know if you think the same.
He's coming back from a knock, though, right?
I think so, but maybe for 20 minutes he could have done it.
Probably didn't want to risk him. That's the only thing I could say. If he's just come back from a knock,
yeah,
he's probably just on the bench just to make up the numbers. Over Bonanotte, who was fit, but yeah, he's not getting off to a great start at the moment with Daniel Farke. Unfortunately for us, because I think he could really contribute in games like this. But yeah, if it was 100% fully fit Dan James, then yeah, because we would have had to ask him to do a lot of high intensity sprints in a short amount of time, and that could have just shredded his hamstring and turned the knock into a full blown injury. So I personally wouldn't have wanted to bring him on. I think if we would have brought on Nonto, it could have helped with our ball retention a little bit. But I think the change which he did made, it almost immediately nearly worked. It's like 2 minutes after the Nature came on the pitch, he had our biggest XG chance of the game. He very, very nearly could have scored from that. It was an excellent save by Emi Martinez on that chance.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people blaming Mecha for that, but honestly, I think he was stretching. It was a diving header. I think he actually did quite well with it, to be fair.
Yeah, I think maybe the only other thing he could maybe have jumped and tried to like just get any contact on it and like down with his feet rather than his head. But I think that would have been just as difficult a technique to get right as that diving header. So, and Martinez got his positioning perfect. He saw where the danger was coming from and moved over to the only side where Mecha could really put the header, because you can't direct diving headers like that at all. You just got to fling yourself at it and get whatever contact you can on it, and he did well in that chance. And there's also another few good moments not long following that. And I think the reason why he brought him on was because I noticed a few times, like when the ball was looking likely to be turned over, you see Mecha making a run forward, like just instinctively, just to try to get into the areas where a long ball could come through to. And I think that was the strategy, and that's what he was told to do by Farke when he went on, was just to try to anticipate those long balls so we can try to get the ball to stick up the pitch a bit more. He wanted basically a lighter version of what Calvert-Lewin gives us, and for me, it was the right change. And Longstaff coming on, I would have maybe liked that a little bit sooner. I would have maybe liked that around 75 rather than 80. That's the only thing I could say. He could have made both those changes at the same time, to be honest. And I can understand why Stach came off. He had put out a lot of effort, and how he must have run a lot of kilometres in this one, did Stach. But yeah, that's getting away from it. Personally, I'm not as bothered about this game with Daniel Farke's lack of changes that he has done. There's been much worse examples of this for me. For me, this is more just when you're against a side with the quality that Villa have, even if their underlines are a bit shonky, away at home, they're going to put pressure on you, and that pressure is eventually going to tell. And I don't think there's too much else we could have done to stop it, personally.
I think one of the things I have mentioned before, so I'm not going to labour on this, but like breaking up the game with subs. And I know we did it a bit because we did use 3 sub windows and separate slots, but you could make 2 players at once in those, like you said. So that's one thing. I guess answering the question, which is, did his changes or lack of them contribute to us dropping 2 points, especially as the goal was so late? Or should we see this as gaining a good point away from home? I think both can kind of coexist a little bit here. I think one of the things I'm pretty frustrated by, and maybe we've been a little bit guilty of this season, but not too much, is that there can be a bit too much criticism of Farker for sure, and there are some people that are unwilling to actually give him any credit for any of the good things we do. And like he got things spot on tactically in that first half, especially off the ball.
Yes.
And even in the second, it was still pretty good. So he gets us into the position to be winning that game against still a pretty good team. And then the other side of this is there are some people who overpraise Farker for every single thing that the club does at the moment, who say things like, all of our signings are on Farker. They're not. Clearly, they're not. There's a recruitment team, not just the players that are sort of scouting and analysing these players, but the actual kind of heads of recruitment that are making the big decisions to bring them in, to agree contracts and deals and all of that. That's not all Farker. He has to sign off on some of these players, but that's not all him. So there are certain sides to the fan base that are doing that, which is also really frustrating to me. And I think this is one of those games where you can definitely give Farker a lot of credit and a lot of praise for how we got into the position we were to be winning so late into the game. And you can also still a little bit say, oh, but could we have done this sub a bit earlier? Could we have done another sub to just break up the game, to maybe give some more fresh legs? For me, Gruev and Stach looked like they were really struggling late in this one. And I just don't really know why they weren't both brought off at the same time, for example. I don't even think it was a game to take Aronson off as well. And it's not like he did a full 90 himself against 120, against Birmingham. So like, it's things like that that still irk me a bit, but this wasn't as bad, like you say, as like Everton. And one of the reasons why I would say this as well is like, you remember the shots we had against Everton, how long the gap was and how long the time was that we were under pressure. It was nearly half an hour that we had to put up with them putting us under pressure, and it felt like it was coming. There was a bit of that here, but it wasn't as bad. I looked at the shots, like we had one in the 57th minute. We didn't have another shot in the first half before then. And then we had quite a few flurry around the 70 to 80th minute when we nearly killed the game off. And Metch was very unlucky not to. Calvert-Lewin had a couple of moments where he was a bit unlucky not to. So I think it was better. It's still not perfect. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And just to... In fact, no, I'm not going to say that bit because it might upset people, so I'm not going to do that. Anyway, should we move on? I think that's enough about that. But basically, yeah, subs this season has still been an issue, as they have in the last 2 seasons. But this wasn't as bad as some of the other games, even though it was still a bit of a problem. Below, we're going to speak about now and what Farker said when asked about the change in momentum. So he said... Speaking to, I think, Adam Pope or someone like that, the York Shooting Post, said, not too much. It's quite normal. I think our defensive structure against the ball made it difficult for them to create chances. We were very good in possession in the first half. It's normal that one of the best teams in the country against a newly promoted side who can bring quality on from the bench and need to win the game, fighting for title and be dominant. I still got the feeling after we changed to a 5-3-2, it was a bit risky to bring a striker on for a midfielder, but I wanted to set the sign we wanted to take part further on. It's not that you can dominate, you still have to defend really well. We should have scored a second. Metch had a really good chance. Calvert-Lewin a good chance. I think Calvert-Lewin would have scored a header if Joe Roden doesn't take the ball away from the free kick. I remember that moment. I think he does as well. I think that's completely right. So Farker seemingly thinks that he did things right and that the change in shape to be able to go a bit more direct was the right one. And I also agree with that, to be fair. I think 2 strikers did make sense. We weren't as able to kind of make the ball stick in the final third, so having 2 profiles like that probably was the right decision. And we did get a bit of joy from it. It's just at the very, very end that they got their chances, didn't they? So, let's talk about potential points tallies for the season now. When will we feel totally comfortable that we're staying up, man? Because I'm kind of there. Like, personally, I don't think it's too much of a concern now with the remaining fixtures that we've got. And should we be feeling that way? I feel like we should, personally.
So, yeah, there is every reason to be confident, I think, at the moment. I'm not going to say that it's guaranteed because football is football and anything can happen, but we should be feeling really happy with the way things are at the moment, especially since now we've got other teams that have just recently dropped below us in Spurs, who have just today lost 4-1 at home to Arsenal in their North London derby. So that is going to be a massive confidence knock for them, even if maybe they didn't really expect to get the win with their current form. But yeah, we definitely should have some good confidence and some things to take away here. So we've been standing at 1.43 points per game in the run that we're currently on since the Man City game. And if we kept up that pace, we would end up on 47, 48 points around that margin. So that is definitely form to stay up on. but how about if our form drops? Okay, so let's say that 1.43 drops to 0.8 points per game. That's a massive drop in what we're currently at, and I think there's maybe one side who have been at that for this season, and that probably Wolves. And even if we did,
less than that.
yeah, exactly. So even if we dropped to 0.8 points per game, which I don't think we've been at all this season so far, so if we were to drop to that, we would still end up with 40 points. So if that doesn't fill you with confidence, then I don't know what else would. And then you've also got to consider that per the stats, we actually have the easiest running of any of the sides who are involved in the relegation battle. There's a couple of sides who have got slightly less challenging ones than us, but they're not at the bottom end of the table.
I imagine if we play our next game, we will have on that thing that you're on about, because I've seen the table myself.
Yeah.
We will be first. We will be the easiest fixtures when we played that game against Man City.
And the team who are at the bottom with the hardest running, do you know who that is, Adam? Can you tell me?
I think it's those Hammers.
I think it is those Hammers. It is those Hammers. So the club who are currently third from bottom, in the ones who you really think would need to do a lot better between now and then, have the hardest running out of any side in this league. So with a combination of the points total we currently have, even if we were to have a massive wobble and drop down to 0.8 points per game, we still end on 40 points. And West Ham would have to seriously raise their points per game to being with us. In the last 14 games in the same thing, they have got, I think there was like 15th. So they've improved from their season average, but they're still well below what we are in this, which I think we're 8th, at least in the expected goal difference table that the All Stats We account put out this morning. I think it was Sunday morning, that is. Have a look at that if you haven't seen it. But yeah, I'm confident. Not 100% there, but I'm very close.
Even if you look at if you ignore like the expected goal difference table and you just look at the actual form table, when West Ham over like the last sort of 7 or 8 games now are actually projecting as like a Europa League level team, which is really good. A Forest? No. A Spurs? No. I know Brighton and Palace both won this weekend, but they're not far above us. Sunderland not far above us. Like, I think we can finish above quite a few of these teams I'm naming, so I'm in agreement with you. It's not on the running order, but I'll ask you another question. What do you actually think the points total is going to be needed to get to? Do you think it's going to be as low as what John thinks, which I think he thinks 35-ish, 35 or 36, I think he thinks? Or do you think it's a bit more than that? Do you think it's 40? Do you think it's somewhere in the middle?
That sounds like too much like a prediction for me, so I'm going to pass.
Okay, well, I'm going to do it. I think it's probably going to be about 38 or 39, probably tops. I think it'll be 39, to be honest. If we get to 40, I just don't see how, like, another team catches, not including Burnley and Wolves. But like,
I don't think it's going to be 40, is what I'll say.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think if we get to 40, we'll be absolutely fine. If we get our season average from what you were saying, 1.14 points per game, so not the recent average where we've improved since that City game, 1.43. 1.14 is like 42 or 43 points, so way above what I just said still. We'd be well comfortable, even though that West Ham game is a little bit nervy on final day, perhaps. We should still be absolutely fine. So I'm not worried, and like you say, the fixtures as well. Fixtures are pretty kind to us after that City game. I think all of those games after City, because we could look to get something from. City's the one that's like, if you can, it's a bonus, but it's not an absolute necessity that we get something from that. So I'm jumping back to the last bit, but I'm only going to do it briefly. You probably don't need to speak here, so I'm just going to do a very quick point on this. Obviously, we've had issues conceding late in games this season pretty often, and we're going to just talk about our thoughts on the rest of the season going into next season, perhaps a little bit, and discuss kind of the issues that we rely on being strong and working harder than our opponents, essentially, which is kind of what it comes down to a lot of the time. We do exert a lot of energy. You see this from the running data. So, like, I'm going to shout out UFC Dota for a lot of these points. So he said, first of all, Leeds have now conceded 12 goals from the 81st minute onwards in the matches this season, more than any other Premier League side in 2025-26. Leeds have dropped 10 points from winning positions away from home in the Premier League this season, and only Bournemouth have dropped more. And then he also points out that in the same kind of bit, Ethan Ampadu covered the largest distance covered by any player involved at Aston Villa in that game with 11.68. The Leeds skipper has now covered the largest distance by any player for the club in 5 of our last 6 matches. Total distance covered, this is about a week old, but James Justin was the runaway in 2026. He's already done 54 miles, and that was before this game. So, another couple of games where he'll have added to that. Like, these numbers are really crazy for the amount of games and the sample sizes that we're talking about. And people are obviously a little bit concerned by the fact that maybe we don't have the bench that has the quality, Martin. So you can jump in here if you want in a second. But some people will say, well, what can we do? Farke doesn't have enough players on his bench that he can use. He's not willing to use them. We've seen how they've played. I don't fully agree with that because I think some of them, Nanto, Tanaka, Dan James, they've shown at this level at times, at least, that they're capable, at the very least, of playing minutes and contributing. And it ties in what we said recently about subs and rotation and why that's needed. And it's important to have a bench that the manager trusts and with qualities we need in terms of out possession and intensity. And I think that's more the point that I want to get at here just quickly. I don't think he trusts all of them out of possession, which is why you do see someone like Longstaff still coming off the bench a little bit because he's more trusted in that regard. He's more physical. He's able to do those things more than other players. So that's why you see him, but you don't see maybe Tanaka, who's intelligent, but is maybe not as kind of physical or as intense. And I think those are the things he's looking for. So when James is up to speed, he'll be a sub that he uses, I think, more, for sure. But I think it is still a bit of an issue that we work so much harder than our opponents than we probably do need to look at, Gruev is flagging here, give him a rest. We've noticed Bogle, I think, he tires a bit in games late on. That's another one, I think. So that's where I'm at. I think we should be doing that a bit more, and that's why I still have a bit of criticism for Farke for this one a little bit. Like some of this has to come and fall at his door. Blame-wise, you can't just blame the players. I think some of it has to be on him. So, yeah, and then one last point from me, then you can have a point, which is for next season, this is more like a longer-term thing. I think we need to be able to make earlier subs more often because we've already got the highest physical output in the league. I'm stealing this from someone I saw on Twitter. And then the other thing is make the subs earlier and use all 5. We need to be doing that more. And we can do that this season as well. But I think with a stronger bench, another summer of Premier League recruitment, we can certainly do that more next season. So that's where I'm at. Anything you wanted to add here, or can we move on?
So I think the reason why we are knackered more than our opponents isn't because we don't have a squad which is capable of it. I think it's because we have a squad who's capable of it, but it's that to get the kind of edge that we've seen in games this season, we've had to work harder than our opposition. We've had to be fitter, we've had to be faster, we've had to be stronger, or attempt to be. And in the games where we can't achieve that, like the Arsenal for instance, we've struggled. And that's because a lot of our upside comes from our out of possession approach, and with how aggressive we are, it's something that Leeds have been known for, being aggressive, probably since a long time past in the 60s, but different sorts of aggression we're talking about, dirty Leeds and all that. But to be able to sustain where we are, that's what we've had to do this season. But that doesn't mean that has to be the approach for next season. There's different ways we could go about building the squad. We could start initially by raising the technical base of the squad and having players who have a good level of intensity, but maybe that's not their biggest strength. So like Longstaff, he is the epitome of this. If you want someone who can bring lots of energy to the game, can do a lot of work out of possession, but let's be honest, is a liability with the ball at his feet, especially in deeper areas. I'm fine with him taking shots from around the box and linking up around the box, that kind of stuff, but in deeper areas, you don't want him really touching the ball. And so we need to try to combine that physicality with a bit more technicality, and that would enable us to pin opponents into the opposition half more than what we've been able to do this season. Like, we wouldn't be able to do what Villa did to us in this game against nearly anyone in this league. Maybe some of the teams right at the bottom of the league we could do it on, but I can't think of a game where we've had this high amount of possession against an opponent. So we need to raise our technical base to be able to take the next step. And that would mean that we wouldn't exert as much energy in games because the clubs who have possession of the ball more aren't having to do as much running. So that's the way I think I would resolve it, because I don't think Daniel Farke is the kind of guy to ever use his bench. We need to take that out of the equation altogether, in my opinion. There's no pointless labour on it. We've mentioned it too many times, and while I still think it's a problem, I'm done talking about it because it's not going to change. It's pointless talking about this on pods anymore because we've talked about it probably at least 10, 11 times this season, and it's an issue that's not going to change. So
yeah,
I'd rather more focus on how we look to resolve the other issue with us needing physicality to have an edge on our opponents and solving the problem a different way.
It's funny because we also, just last point, we got it right to cede possession to Villa in this game and kind of look to soak and frustrate, but it does exert a lot of energy. It does exert a lot of intensity, and that's what you're saying basically is we need to move away from intensity slightly. Not completely, we still need that in our game, but we need to have a few more profiles that do that. So I totally agree. Right then, let's move on to the second half of the analysis where we'll discuss specific players' performances and all of that in a bit more detail. And we've got a few more questions from you guys as well. Let's talk about Gabriel Goodmanson, and this is why we didn't include this in the news section, Martin, because have we got any ideas why we would choose to start him after Farke has mentioned that he's been ill this week before the game? Don't know how long for, don't know how severe it was, but basically said he was ill, he felt more and more unwell in the last few days. We were a bit concerned that he couldn't start. Thank God there was no temperature and he played his part in a really solid first half. I would have preferred him to stay a bit longer. We wanted to keep Rodon against Watkins with his pace and his sharp movements. Yakov had to play 120 minutes in the FA Cup as well. We wanted to manage his minutes a bit. It caused some changes to positions. How they reacted was great. It's another sign of who is needed steps in. So that's explaining why, because a lot of people confused that Beale didn't start. There wasn't a lot of confusion that Goodmanson did. That was probably expected, but then learning that he was ill did cause some confusion. So why did we do that, Martin?
I could not tell you. When I found that out after the game, I was really angry. It's just like, why would you do that when the more logical choice for this game was to include Yaka Beale anyway? I know Beale and Goodmanson aren't exactly interchangeable, but they kind of are, because then you just put Yaka into the central defensive area and you put James Justin into Goodmanson's spot, which is a change which happened at half-time when Goodmanson came off. So, considering that there were alternatives in Justin, I get that he's not a left footer, and you ideally want a left footer there, but Goodmanson's played a lot of minutes. He's a player who's played the most minutes for us in outfield areas. Give the guy a break. Yeah, Yaka played 120 minutes on Sunday. So what? He's a big Slovenian unit, and he can handle it. I guarantee you he can handle it.
He doesn't run as much. He doesn't have
to. Exactly. He's a centre-back. He doesn't need it as much. And considering a lot of these players who are in this squad now were playing 3 games a week in 7-8 days last season, they can manage it fine. You're telling me that a Slovenian international who's played in Serie A can't handle 120 minutes last weekend and another 90 this weekend? Of course he can handle it. That's just making excuses, if I'm totally honest. And that annoyed me more than anything which happened during this game, if I'm totally honest. Because, yeah, Beale was the centre-back I wanted to start most in this one, just because of how good he is at sniffing out danger around the box. We could ignore, or maybe this factors into it. Did you think at all he's the penalty that he gave away against Chelsea is played on his mind, Farke's mind?
You put me on the spot here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. Genuinely, maybe. It was brainless, like completely.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's ridiculous if that was in his thinking at all, because it's a brain dead moment. Every single player in the world, especially in defensive areas, has made one of those brain dead moments. Mm-hmm. They all have. Every player has. It's going to happen. It's totally out of character for Yaka. He's usually really level-headed. He's aggressive, but he's tempered in his aggression and doesn't make those kind of decisions often or ever. Really, we've not seen him do that kind of thing at all. Yeah, he had a shaky start in the cup game against Sheffield Wednesday, which is really funny result when you think about what's been happening with them this season. Anyway, that's a different point altogether. But yeah, I think the logical choice was to start Yaka in this one and give Goodmanson a break if he's ill. Let him have a day off. Daniel, Christ.
Yeah, if you're really desperate for him to be involved, put him on the bench and bring him on. If you think, you ask him, you go, are you feeling okay? And as footballers do, and this is where I want to defend Farker a tiny bit. Like footballers genuinely do say, "Oh, I'm fine. I'll feel a little bit, but I'll be all right. I'll be all right. I'll just play through it. I'll be okay. Like I'm just a little bit fluey. I'll be okay." They do it all the time because they don't want to lose their place. But maybe for Goodmanson, it doesn't make sense for him to behave like that. This is almost one of the most locked-in positions in the entire team.
He's the only left back we've got. The only left-footed left back we've got. So he's playing every game he's available.
He also did, because he came off, you were talking about the fact he's played the most minutes this season. That was correct until he got taken off. Joe Rodon's just overtaken him.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players that have played over 2,000 minutes, and it's essentially our defensive unit because it's Strauch, Bogle, Ampadu, Goodmanson, and Rodon in ascending order.
Yeah, I can't tell you how happy I am that Strauch is in that list, by the way, that he's been more available for us.
He's been great this season, and he's not been too unavailable. I'm sure there might be another issue to come in the last 11 games, but hopefully not. But yeah, I completely get your point, and I do hope that it's more Goodmanson pushing Farker to say, I'm fine, rather than Farker going, you're fine, aren't you? Because I want you to play. But I don't know. It probably could be some bit of one and half a dozen of the other than one of those situations. But I totally agree. Like, he shouldn't have played as much as he did, and he definitely, like, let's be really serious for a second. He definitely wasn't at it. Like,
no,
there were a couple of good runs he did down the left channel that were pretty good and sort of his classic lung busting ones. But some of his concentration levels around the ball and letting build up and what he was doing, I don't know. He wasn't quite at it for sure. And like I said, the left side, just in terms of using the ball, they just weren't connecting as well as they have in other games.
I think that was a big reason.
Yeah, I do as well.
I think Pascal did make a couple of mistakes with the ball as well, but I think it was also, I think he maybe had been playing on his mind as well. If he was aware that Goodmanson was ill, who knows how that can affect players around them. But yeah,
it's an interesting one with Strauch. Probably not going to have another chance to speak about it. So just really quickly, I thought off the ball he had an immense game, and I thought on the ball one of his slightly weaker ones lately that he's had. And it wasn't awful. It was just like not quite as good as usual. And that's kind of flipped because normally he maybe plays like one bad pass in a game. Here it was like 2 or 3 where I was just like, what are you doing, mate? But his off-ball stuff was great. Like, he really did handle his kind of channel well, Rodgers well, when he had to follow him around the pitch. He was brilliant at that. So one of our better players for sure. Let's quickly talk about the goal, though, speaking of sort of central defenders and how they defended, because Farker said that below. I'm going to read it out now. We've read a lot of Farker out today. The manner we conceded, we gave away to throw too cheap. We could have been more switched on for the give and go. Joe Rodon made a monster block, but sadly out for a corner, and then Joe could have jumped earlier. We would celebrate 3 points, but football is about details. I didn't complain too much. A really good performance. I don't know if we can add too much to what he said, because he's basically saying Rodon got out jumped and he shouldn't have been. And I agree, because Ezri Konsa, as we mentioned on the preview, is not actually like a monster in it. He's a brilliant centre-back, but he's not a monster in the air. He's good for his size, but he's not amazing. Rodon shouldn't be out jumped like that from Konsa. He's got like 2 or 3 inches on him. I was really disappointed with that one. And that was basically what caused the goal, isn't it? So,
yeah,
that frustrated me.
The reason why I include that quote is because, for once, I 100% agree with Daniel Farker.
Yeah.
And that doesn't often happen. That is all it was. He jumps too late. That was what it was. I know Joe can jump higher than that, but Konsa jumped earlier than he did. He should have been jumping like a second sooner than what he did. And if he would have done that, I have confidence that either he wins the aerial, or at the very least, he puts Konsa off enough so the ball doesn't go anywhere near Abraham. And that was a lucky as hell finish. Abraham just threw a leg out, it hit his knee and then looped over Calvert-Lewin's head. It was so unlucky. That's another reason why I don't want to really give Fark too much criticism for this one, because it was just such a bad, it was a fluky goal to score. But I also like that we played Villa at their own game for massive parts of this, literally scoring from a 30-yard free kick.
Yeah, fair. Just so people that care about shots and post-shot XG, Tammy Abraham, his chance that he scored at the end is a 0.25 expected goal shot initially, and it turned into a 0.96. So a lot of people seeing that and going, wow, what a finish. But I agree with you. I think it's complete
He just hits his
fluke.
knee. He just
Yeah,
flings a leg out.
Yeah. I think
There's no
maybe there is
technique in
some
it.
intent to hit that kind of area.
Well,
but
I just think he was just trying to get anything on it.
Yeah, it's kind of late in the game, just throw something out, I hope it goes
good
in.
Good instincts, that's all I'll give him. Yeah.
And then the other point is Calvert-Lewin and Rooney. I've mentioned him too much on a pod that's about Leeds, but again, on the Match of the Day thing, he said, and he'll know well because he'll have played with Calvert-Lewin, he is one of the best players in the league for his kind of spring, his jumping ability. And I don't think he does anything wrong with that jump. It's just really unlucky that it just is out of reach.
Well, like he's not going to reach the crossbar, is he? As high as he's going to jump, he's not reaching the crossbar.
I don't know how it managed to evade. It was like the one point in the goal, and the way it went up and looped was the one place it could have really gone that he couldn't get to. It was so annoying, but it's really, really unlucky. So yeah. But Rodon could have done better. I think that's very fair. Even though he had a pretty solid game here, he could have done better.
He was weak with his aerials in this one. That's one thing I would say. He only completed 2 out of 6.
And actually,
aerial duels.
If people didn't know, I haven't looked at this for a few weeks, but season-wide data out of the 3 main centre-backs that played the most minutes for us, Biol, Strauch and Rodon. Rodon is the worst for aerials completed, like 1. He's not doing great on that front. It's Strauch and Biol who are doing quite a lot in that regard.
Surely not Strauch. He's too handsome to be that good at
he's too soft. He's actually number 1, not Biol, which is a little bit surprising.
What? Okay, that one has surprised me.
Biol, I haven't checked it again for a while, but I don't think it'll have changed much. I think it's 3 games ago I checked it, so won't change much. Biol, I do think marks harder players in the air, to be fair to him. So that might make him suffer a bit, but
potentially,
it's interesting that Strauch and Biel are at the top 2, and Rodon's a little bit further back. Ref was pretty rubbish in this. We're talking about player performances. I don't want to talk about this because we never talk about refs, but just wanted to say, because people will appreciate it, he was awful. There were moments in this game where he was giving them free kicks and corners for nothing. There was a moment where a player was offside for them, had a shot, went out for a corner. It was clearly offside. He's already given the corner. He can't reverse the decision. And then they have another good chance from said corner, which shouldn't have even happened in the first place, which is why VAR is rubbish, because it can't go back if they score from that corner and say, oh, well, they were offside from the initial shot. Anyway, whatever. So that was really annoying. I wanted to ask you something because, again, I've mentioned him today, Jack, but he made a really interesting point on Twitter. If we've got a moment just to speak about before we do Man of the Match. Jayden Bogle, he said, I'd make the argument that at his best level, Jayden Bogle is our best player. Has moments, but mostly very solid defensively now. His athleticism helps add that, and also now that he moves with the ball. He's a top right back in terms of his playmaking and passing ability, and he has the technicals to play in pockets. He's a good combination player with any of the types of winger, which we saw a lot last season. He takes a lot of responsibility with the ball to force the ball into almost into dangerous areas at times. He can play almost any sort of right back role you ask of him. He could probably even play in midfield. He's played at right wing for us, and he's also a super fun player to watch as well. I just wondered what your thoughts were basically on the main point, which is when a player is at their absolute sort of 9, 10 out of 10 level performance, who are the standouts in your mind? Because I think there's one player that we're going to talk about for Man of the Match who nearly hit that kind of level. And I do kind of agree with Jack that Bogle's up there for me. When he's actually fully at it, he has to be considered one of our sort of 3, 4, 5 best. He's just absolutely amazing. At every single kind of facet of being a right back, creatively carrying, like he says, in pockets, combination, all of those things. So I think he's up there, but there's a couple of others. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on that from Jack, because we do like Jack.
Funnily enough, earlier today I was talking with my brother about Jayden Bogle. He asked me if I thought that Bogle could have a shot going to the World Cup, and I said to him that he's close. The players who we're ahead of are better than him. There's no doubt about that. When you got players like Reece James, Trent Alexander-Arnold, those are amazing players. But the thing which Bogle has over either of those two is availability. And both of them are very injury prone. And potentially, if there is a few injuries to these sort of key players, Trippier is also another one who is knocking on a bit now. Yeah.
He's retired from England.
Has he retired from international? I didn't realise that. Anyway, that helps his case even more. But you've also got Tino Livramento as well.
And Jed Spence, probably the other four.
Yeah. So there is a lot of competition at right back for England. But what I said to him was also that I think Bogle is the sort of player who translates so well to a better side that he would slot in absolutely seamlessly with that England side, in my opinion. He's got the technical base for it. That's what you want from a right back toward the top end of the league. And I would be very surprised if Bogle isn't being looked at by a side further up the table than us, because he's absolutely excellent. And I almost think that he suits a better side more than us, because we have to defend a lot more. And while he's not bad defensively, I do not think for 1 second that he's actually bad. It's not his greatest strength.
Probably average, but he's above average in the technicals and the footballing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why he was so excellent for us last season. He can score, he can assist. He just doesn't get the opportunity to do that as much. But now he's playing even further forward than he ever has done, really. He's essentially playing as a right winger in this system that we're playing at the moment. Because in possession, for anyone who doesn't know, and this is still a thing, that James Justin will move to right back when we're in possession of the ball, and Bogle will go even further up the field, and then the two of them will alternate around each other, and one time one of them will be the right back, or the other time the other one will be the right winger. So sometimes you have James Justin who's playing as a right winger, but he's an excellent player, and I'm very happy to have him, and I do hope we can keep hold of him, because I do think there will be interest in him this summer.
I do as well. I think he's one of a couple. The comparisons with like Goodmanson are interesting, because like Goodmanson on the other side, better athlete. He's definitely quicker. I think his engine's a little better as well. Like his just straight line stamina all game.
Unreal.
It's absolutely ridiculous. Bogle's good. Goodmanson's unreal in that respect. And his ball carrying is probably a little better as well. But actually, the technical stuff and like around the box, I trust Bogle way more to make the right decision when finding a teammate or combining with a teammate to get into a good position. He's really good in that respect. So totally agree. I think he's one of a couple of players. I think Stach's another. I think Ampadu's maybe another that I think there might be some interest in this summer, and we might have to be careful. But to answer Jack's question, it wasn't even a question put to us. I just put it in. I think there's 4 players for me when they're at their absolute best that they're absolutely amazing for us. I feel harsh leaving a few others out who I really love, but I think it's Bogle. I agree with that one. And I'd have Calvert-Lewin, I'd have Stach, and I'd have Ampadu as the other 3. Like when they're at it, they are so good, like so relentless, and such important parts of this team. Stach and Ampadu is like the engine essentially in the middle, like obviously. And it probably brings us on nicely towards the end of this pod. I don't really want to ask you who struggled in this match. There weren't that many players, to be fair. I thought Gruev had a bit of a struggly game, but it wasn't too terrible. It was just not great. He looked like he was flagging quite badly, and before that wasn't amazing, but like wasn't awful. And then we had a lot of players that actually played pretty well for at least 70 minutes. It was just kind of the end of the game. We were struggling a tiny bit. And I think you're going to say, at least a couple of the players I'm going to say, the Leeds United poll, as we've been recording, that they put out, has come out. Anton Stach got the man of the match award with 63%. Second was Ethan Ampadu with 16%, and then there was a bit of a drop off after that to the rest. And I do think, as I just said, when those two are at it and when they play well as a midfield duo, well, they're not really as a duo, but like as a part of that midfield, are just incredible, and they can really drive us on. And they must have covered so much. Well, we already know Ampadu did, and Stach appeared to as well. They must have covered so much grass. So those two right up there for me in this one. Anyone else? And do you want to just give some praise to? We haven't even talked about the free kick, for example. Do you want to just give some praise to Anton Stach, because that was stupendous?
Well, first of all, my man of the match is Anton Stach.
Me too.
If it wasn't for the free kick, it would have been very close still, even without the free kick, because both him and Ampadu were excellent out of possession. Our success in this game came from how relentless we were, and those two were massive parts of that. Just to give some numbers behind this, Ampadu made 9 recoveries, Stach made 6 recoveries. Defensive actions, this one is fucking unbelievable, the difference here. So across both teams, the top 2 players were Ampadu and Rodon. Ampadu had 21 defensive actions. Roden had 14. So that's a full 7 defensive actions more than the closest player.
I look at this stat every game now, and normally the best player is about 15, 16. So 21 is bonkers.
Yeah, it is. And he was so up and down, and he wasn't even just his out of possession stuff, which was good as well. I really enjoyed that run that he made in the second half. I think you'll know the one that I'm talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, that run was excellent. He carried the ball really smoothly, and then he just laid it off nicely to someone who's more competent at getting the ball into attacking areas. Although he did get a good assist not too long ago. I think even he will admit his forte is not passing inside the box or shooting. He needs to stop shooting.
Too high up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just progress the ball nicely, then pass it on to a better technician. But yeah, he was excellent throughout this game, and I just want to shout him out. But Stach was my man of the match because he was also relentless with everything which he was doing out of possession. But that free kick, my word, that is up there with one of the best free kicks I've seen, not just Leeds related ones. It's just the way it's hit, the speed and the pace. And I think that even if Martinez was expecting him to shoot from there, he still would have struggled with that. I think maybe he would still have saved it, but it would have been a world-class save. So the people who see that free kick in the first instance is to say, keeper should have done better. Shut up. Are you serious? He's 30 yards out. He's not central. There's not going to be any goalkeeper in the world who's expecting a shot there, if I'm totally honest. And yeah, it was a superbly hit free kick, just to have the sight to see that he wasn't expecting the shot, and then managing to execute it, because you're talking like a 2-yard square area where he had to try to get that, because Martinez wasn't far away from it. He nearly got a fingertip to it, but he still didn't save it. Like, it's just such an excellent free kick, and the fact that he scored 3 this season is even better. And it's making all those, what was said, that Anton Stach is the Temu Declan Rice, or that, yeah, he's looking more like the other way around. And yeah, another thing I put out when I'm talking about this on the All Stat We account was a visual looking at goals and assists per 90 on one side, and then the other side was defensive duel won by percentage, not by number, because obviously he's going to have more numbers wise because we're defending a lot more, but by percentage wise, and he's better than Declan Rice at both of those things this season. I'm not saying he's better than Declan Rice, but yeah, he's close. He's excellent. He's Anton, and we're going to really struggle to keep hold of him, in my opinion.
Just the age thing going on our side, I think, a little bit there.
I don't think so. I think people will be bidding for him this season, 40 million bids. Trust me.
That'll test us. I think it goes a little bit beyond that. I'll speak about him in a second, just very briefly. But 2 players that didn't get man of the match for me, but were also sort of up there, other than Ampadu and Bogle, probably the 2 we already mentioned. Roden and Strout, mainly because of the jobs they had to do in this game. Roden on Watkins, excellent, and Strout on Rodgers, excellent. So amazing games from both. I know Roden makes a bit of an error of the goal, so that knocks him down a tiny bit, but like still really, really strong of what they had to do off the ball. But yeah, for me, it's Stach, and the reason isn't just the free kick, it's everything else that he put into this game. Defensive actions were still up there, even though he came off on 70 minutes, 11, I think he had. So just an amazing player, like in every kind of bit of the game at the moment. That's why I think he's one of our best players, if not our best player, especially when he's at it. But I think the free kick's underrated, Martin, by everyone. Like I know 100%. People think it's good, but it's actually underrated, and the reason is because essentially, in a lot of cases like that, you have to put a lot of welly into it, like a lot of power to get it there. Because if you put a little bit too much, like if you get the accuracy but not the power, Martinez just couple of steps across and catches it. He doesn't even have to struggle. If you get the power but not the accuracy, it goes over the bar. And most of the time, that's probably the case that happens here. And I know it doesn't go right in the top corner, but it's not far off. And it's so different. Like you say, it's like a yard, maybe 2 yard square that he's got to, probably a yard to be fair. And he gets it into that. It is absolutely outrageous. It's one of the best free kicks I've ever seen. And yet it's a month when in the Premier League we've seen Szoboszlai score one of the best free kicks I've ever seen. And I think one of those 2 goals is probably going to win Premier League goal of the season at the moment.
Szoboszlai's free kicks was excellent as well.
The only other one I can think of was actually either this month or last month as well, which was Solanke's scorpion kick against, was it Man United or Man City? Man City, I think it was, wasn't it? Those are the 3, and they've all been really recent. I can't think of anything else this season that comes even close. And we've had some good goals ourselves, like Longstaff, Stach's other free kick, like that goal against Sunderland, which I'm a huge fan of because I love those kinds of goals, back to front so quickly. But this is just, the quality of the goal is outrageous. I think it's the best goal we've scored since Bamford against Peterborough. And it's close with that, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So, yeah, I can't even put into words the reaction that I had watching it, like the swear words coming out of my mouth. Because it was amazing, to be fair. So, yeah, he's my man of the match before that, but like even for that, just has to be. I think that's it. No one else really to talk about. Like, just, I love the bloke and I hope we keep him because at the moment he needs to slow down on that front and needs to not score another free kick. If he wants to score an open play goal, like he taps it in, that's fine. Don't be scoring any more free kicks, mate. I don't think we can afford that because we're going to lose you if you do. But we're going to end it here. So a reminder for Patreon, where can they find that, Martin?
Patreon.com/ASAW Patreon.
And again, everyone listening, even if you're not on YouTube right now, please go like and subscribe on that. It would really do us a big, big help. And that's all we have time for tonight. So we'll be back with a preview of the next game, which is against Man City, and Sunderland also isn't far behind either. So might be some double header stuff coming your way soon. But all that's left for me to say is thank you very much to Martin.
Thank you as well, mate.
Thank you, everyone listening. We hope you enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you soon. Bye.